Yesterday still lingers, not in the chart, but in you. Every trader thinks they start fresh each morning, but the mind remembers, the body remembers, the heart remembers. The last win, the last loss, the last moment you said this time will be different. But it isn't different because you brought yesterday with you. This is how recency bias begins. It's quiet, subtle, invisible. It disguises itself as confidence after a win and caution after a loss. It tells you you're trading the market when in truth, you're trading your memory. In this episode of Mind Over Markets, we explore how to break that cycle, how to reset the mind, release the residue of the past, and trade each moment as if it were new. Because the market doesn't remember your last trade, only you do. And that's where awareness must begin. Yesterday never really ends, not for a trader. It lingers in the body, in the breath, in the tiny twitch of your finger before you click. You can close the charts, shut the laptop, tell yourself you've moved on, but a part of you still carries it. The win, the loss, the mistake, the what if. I used to think every day in the market was a new beginning, but it wasn't. It was a continuation of bias, of emotion, of expectation. Because no matter how clean the chart looked, my mind was never neutral. It was still reacting to something that had already happened. I was trading the ghost of yesterday. There's a name for that. It's called recency bias. It's the quiet voice that tells you the last trade defines the next one. It's the reason you hesitate after a loss or over-leverage after a win. It's the reason you break your own rules while convincing yourself you're still following them. Recency bias doesn't live in your strategy. It lives in your nervous system. It's ancient, older than charts, older than logic, older than reason. Your brain was built to survive, not to calculate probability. And survival means remembering what just hurt you or what just rewarded you. That's why the last trade always feels heavier than the next one. It carries emotion. The charts may reset overnight, but your chemistry doesn't. After a big win, dopamine floods the brain. You feel sharp, fast, unstoppable. The body translates that high into confidence, but confidence easily becomes overconfidence. You stop reading structure and start chasing euphoria. You're no longer analyzing the market, you're recreating yesterday's feeling. And after a loss, cortisol takes the stage. Your brain switches to protection mode. You second-guess everything. You tighten stops too early. You skip valid setups. You let fear disguise itself as discipline. And all the while you tell yourself you're being rational. You're not. You're being emotional, just in a quieter way. That's the paradox of trading psychology. The pain of yesterday doesn't show up as pain. It shows up as control, as hesitation, as the need to be right again. And the more you try to control, the further you drift from presence. I used to wake up every morning promising myself I'd start fresh, that this day would be different. But when I looked closely, I realized I was bringing the same emotional residue into every session. The same fear, the same need to recover, the same desire to prove, the same illusion of control. That's recency bias. It's not about memory, it's about emotional carryover. The market changes every second, but the mind moves in slow motion. The professional trader doesn't have a better brain. They have a shorter memory. Not because they forget, but because they release. They know that every trade, every outcome, every tick belongs to its moment only. The amateur trades their emotions from yesterday. The professional trades the probabilities of today. And the difference between them is awareness. Awareness isn't mystical. It's mechanical. It's the act of noticing when yesterday starts to leak into today. It's feeling your bias surface and choosing not to obey it. Because the truth is, you will always have recency bias, but awareness can reset it. That's where the real work begins. There was a day I remember clearly. I had just come off a week of winning trades. Everything I touched turned green. The kind of week that makes you believe you've cracked the code. I sat down that morning feeling invincible. The same chart, the same pair, the same strategy, but this time I wasn't following the system. I was following momentum. Not market momentum, but emotional momentum. The bias whispered, "It worked yesterday. It'll work again." The first trade hit my stop, small loss, no big deal. But something shifted. My mind didn't register that loss as one event. It registered it as a threat to my streak. And suddenly the goal was no longer to trade well, it was to not lose again. I chased setups that weren't there. I widened stops, ignored structure, overtraded. Each click felt urgent, necessary, justified. I called it being in flow, but I was drowning in recency. That's how the bias hides itself. It doesn't shout. It whispers logic that sounds reasonable. It tells you you're adapting when you're actually reacting. It convinces you you're in control when you're just repeating a pattern. Recency bias is the illusion of learning. It makes you believe that what just happened must mean something profound. But the market doesn't carry meaning. It carries variance. And variance doesn't care about your feelings. The more I studied my own reactions, the more I realized how much of my trading was driven by emotion disguised as insight. I wasn't responding to data, I was responding to the memory of pain or pleasure. I was trying to prevent the next hurt or recreate the last high, and both were traps. The problem with trading yesterday is that it blinds you to now. Every chart becomes a projection of memory. You stop seeing what is and start seeing what was. That's why losses pile up, not because your strategy failed, but because your perspective did. Your lens was fogged by emotion. It took me years to learn that the market has no continuity, only my perception does. The candle doesn't know about the last one, but I do. And until I reset that link, I can't trade cleanly. The hardest part about being a trader is not forecasting the market. It's forgetting the past. It's trading this candle as if you've never seen one before, with full awareness and zero attachment. That's the reset, not a technical adjustment, but a psychological cleanse. It begins with acknowledgement. This feeling I have right now isn't about this trade. It's about the last one. That sentence alone can save you thousands of dollars and months of frustration. Because once you name it, you neutralize it. Once you see the ghost, it stops haunting you. Awareness is the antidote to bias, and structure is the anchor that keeps awareness steady. Every professional trader has rituals, not for luck, but for reset. Some meditate, some write, some step away from screens after a big trade win or lose. It's not superstition, it's neurochemistry. They're resetting the body before the next decision. They know the body carries yesterday longer than the mind admits. When I learned to reset between trades, my results changed. Not because I became smarter, but because I became slower, less reactive, more deliberate, more present. And the more present I became, the less the past controlled me. Every morning before I open my charts, I remind myself of one truth. Yesterday is gone, but it's still hiding in my habits. The brain doesn't wipe memory. It rewires patterns. And the only way to reset those patterns is through awareness and repetition. So I built my own ritual, a simple 3-step process I call the recency reset. Step 1, name the bias. I ask myself, am I about to trade the market or my memory? If I can feel the echo of yesterday's win or loss, I don't act. I breathe, I observe. Step 2, neutralize the emotion. I take 30 seconds to disconnect. No screens, no charts, just breath. I let the chemistry settle because clarity only returns in calmness. And calmness is a skill, not a gift. Step 3, return to structure. I rid my plan. Not because I don't know it, but because my brain needs to resync with objectivity. Every time I do that, I remind my body who's in charge, the system, not the sensation. It sounds small, but it's everything. Those tiny pauses are what separate consistency from chaos. They're the difference between reacting and responding. Recency bias isn't an enemy to destroy. It's a signal to understand. It tells you when you've started living in yesterday's story. And awareness gives you the power to end that story before it writes your next trade. Some days, the reset happens instantly. Other days, it takes time. But that's okay. Because mastery isn't the absence of emotion. It's the mastery of awareness. I no longer try to be perfect. I try to be present. Perfection is an illusion. Presence is a practice. And every time I reset, I'm teaching my brain that the past is not predictive, it's just perspective. When I let go of yesterday, the market becomes clear again. Every candle becomes new, every moment neutral, every click conscious. That's how professionals trade, not with fear, not with hope, but with awareness. Recency bias will always whisper. It will remind you of yesterday's pain or pleasure. But it doesn't have to define your today. You can reset it with awareness, with structure, with stillness, because the market doesn't remember your last trade. Only you do. And that's both the problem and the solution. The past has no power unless you give it meaning. And every moment you breathe, you get to choose again. Don't let yesterday trade today. Trade this moment. Trade with presence. Trade with awareness. That's how the reset begins. That's how the professional is born. That's how mind conquers market. Every trader wants to move forward, but few realize that moving forward first means letting go. You can't build awareness on a foundation of memory. You can't trade the present while carrying the weight of the past. Yesterday is over. It has nothing new to teach you except how to begin again. The chart is neutral. The market is new. Only your emotions remember. So when the urge returns, when your hand hovers above the mouse, and your mind whispers, make it back, pause, breathe, reset. Because mastery isn't about never feeling fear. It's about not letting yesterday's fear make today's decisions. The market moves forward only in one direction, and so should you. This is Mind Over Markets, where awareness resets the bias and the trader becomes still enough to finally see clearly.